Turns out we've been thinking about the video game industry all wrong, and Xbox has got to figure it out. You see, over years, generations, we have been told as fans of gaming that we have to buy a very specific box in order to play the games that we love. It's the only form of entertainment that functions like that. Imagine this scenario. I come up to you and I'm like, hey, I got this hit movie. It's called Dune 2. Everyone loves this movie. Everyone's raving about it. Do you want to watch it? And you go, hell yeah, I want to watch that movie. It looks badass. And I say, great, give me $500. I'll sell you this box, and then you can watch the movie. You'd probably be looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not doing that. But as fans of gaming, that's something that we just totally accept. But honestly, it's the only thing that I've ever known. I've never thought of a way to do it differently. My whole entire life, I've bought consoles because of exclusives. This Xbox 360, this was actually the third 360 that I ever bought. I bought it so I could play Halo with my friends. Same thing with any of the consoles that you see behind me, the Switch, the PS5, the Series X. Or if we lived in a world where we didn't have to buy all of these separate pieces of hardware in order to enjoy the games that we love. For all of the criticism that Microsoft and Xbox has been getting over the past couple of weeks, whether it's been the Tango Gameworks closure or choosing to port over their exclusives to other platforms, I'm interested to see where they end up because I'm interested in a world where I have one box and I play all of my games on that box. That might be a little far off, but at least limiting the amount of plastic boxes that I have. And this is something that Microsoft has actually been working towards for a while now. Back in 2018, they made the radical announcement that they were going to be bringing first-party games over to Game Pass the same day that they released. In 2019, just a year later, they announced that any game that they bring over to PC was not only going to be coming to Windows, but also to other storefronts like Steam. And it was in that moment that Xbox figured out that there was an alternate path here. Because the same criticisms that are being leveled against them today, oh, what's the point of buying an Xbox if I can play their games on PlayStation 5, on PC, wherever, existed back then. People were like, why would they bring their games over to Steam, over to PC? It makes no sense. Why don't they keep it exclusive to sell more Xbox consoles? Well, because they're still going to be making money anyway, and they don't have to sell you the box in order to do so. And let's be real, chances are if you're playing an Xbox game on PC, you're doing so on Windows anyway, which is a platform that they own. Right now, a bunch of people are mad at them for closing Tango Gameworks. I'm sure some people are mad at them for closing Arcane Austin, but the majority of people I feel like are upset about the closure of Tango Gameworks. Turns out that if you ship a hit game like Hi-Fi Rush, or at least a game that a lot of people like, and then close down the studio, it's gonna upset a few people. And before that, Xbox was in the crosshairs for deciding to ship Sea of Thieves, Pentiment, Grounded, and Hi-Fi Rush over to Nintendo Switch and PS5, with some people even going so far as to say that they were done with Xbox. They were going to sell their Xbox console and they were never going to buy another Xbox product or piece of hardware again. But while everyone's up in arms about what Xbox is doing with these closures, with these layoffs, with this multi-platform strategy, it seems that other big players in the industry, at least to some degree, are mirroring what Xbox is doing. The other day, we got news that Square Enix was going to aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy, following a financial report that was basically like, ooh, guys, we're losing a bunch of money, we gotta figure something else out. Sales rose by something like 3%, but profit margins are down by like 15 or something like that. And overall, they had an operating loss of over like 51 million USD. Now, I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel and a camera. I'm not technically a businessman, but even I can look at that and be like, 51 million in terms of losses, that is not sustainable, that's not good. And so because of that, they are mulling over this multi-platform strategy, which includes a Nintendo Switch, PC, and Xbox. The expectation is that mainline big Final Fantasy games are no longer going to be exclusive to the PlayStation platform. Now, let me be clear, I'm not rejoicing in this bad news from Square Enix. I'm not going to point fingers and say, haha, this partnership that you had with Sony and PlayStation, I'm so glad that it backfired. Now you got to come crawling to other platforms in order to dig you out of this hole. No, none of that. It's super unfortunate that it had to come to this point, especially because they also laid off a bunch of people in their US and European offices. But as Xbox fans, the multi-platform news is good. A lot of games, especially, like I said, the mainline Final Fantasy games, skip over the Xbox platform. Games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy XVI, Octopath Traveler 2 for some reason. Hopefully this pivot from Square means that people who really want to play Square games on their Xbox console or on PC or wherever, have it tied to their digital library, will now have the opportunity to do so. Now, I do see a lot of people confused about that because the general understanding was that Final Fantasy 16 was a success. A bunch of people really enjoyed that game. I didn't really, I'm sorry, but I know a lot of people did. Some people even went so far as to say that it was snubbed for a Game of the Year nomination. And as far as we've heard about sales, it was doing fine from last we heard, but apparently the initial momentum for Final Fantasy 16 in terms of sales was doing really well, then it tapered off and ultimately disappointed. It sold about 3 million copies over the course of a year. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is kind of in the same boat. It reviewed very well, but apparently is not selling very well, and they haven't even reported sales numbers. And unfortunately, we are seeing yet another example of a publisher, a studio making a good game and it not selling well or not well enough. Just last week, a bunch of people were like, what the heck, Xbox? Why did you shut down Tango Gameworks? You said that Hi-Fi Rush was a success, it reviewed very well, it won a bunch of awards, yet you still closed the studio down. I brought this up in another video, but Insomniac Games is kind of in the same boat. They shipped Marvel Spider-Man 2, and it reviewed very well. It sold 10 million copies, and Sony turned around and fired a bunch of people from that studio. Over the years, there are a bunch of examples of the same thing happening. I see a bunch of people saying, like, Square's expectations are way too high. They should try to lower their expectations. No way is these games are going to sell like 1 billion copies every time. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, it's in the numbers right there, is that the sales of both Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Foam Stars, for some reason, was included in this, were not enough to offset development costs and marketing costs, and ultimately led them to firing a bunch of people and considering a multi-platform strategy. Same thing that Xbox is doing. Same thing that Sony is reportedly doing. Earlier this year, they were like, Helldivers is doing really well on Steam. We're selling way more than we would have with just a regular console launch. In the future, we're going to do more of that stuff. Microsoft, Sony, publishers like Square, they are slowly starting to realize that things are changing, especially with the home console market. Top executives from Microsoft, from Sony, they're predicting a decline in home console hardware sales. And yes, PlayStation 5 sales, they're still doing well. In fact, they outsold Xbox Series X and S console sales by over 5 times, but they're still down by 30% year over year, which was the same position that Xbox consoles were in, and everyone was making fun of them for it. With the rise of PC gaming, I think we've hit a point where console gaming, PlayStations, Xboxes, they're never going to be as popular as they were back in like 2016 through 2019. But hey, I could be wrong. Again, I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel and a camera. This could be just the ramblings of a madman. Like Nintendo's over there just chilling. They seem to have figured it out. But Xbox especially, for as much flack as they are getting for this multi-platform light strategy, I think it's something, honestly, that they need to do in order to continue to survive as a brand. If they relied just on the people who bought Xbox consoles, it still wouldn't be enough because there's only like, what, not even 30 million consoles out there? And Xbox is apparently debating that too internally. According to Jez Corden, he says that the multi-platform strategy internally over at Xbox Microsoft is being referred to as Project Latitude. He also says that there is some unease revolving Project Latitude. People are unsure whether or not it's a good idea. He says more upcoming Microsoft-owned games slated for PlayStation are already being developed, at least for now. They're potentially obvious games you'd most likely expect. And yes, while it's true Microsoft is a prolific publisher on PlayStation already, it has typically revolved around specific franchises like Minecraft. From what I've heard, Microsoft is pushing for no red line for what games could come to PlayStation, and it all revolves around Satya Nadella and CFO Amy Hood's mandate to increase every department's margins. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. What does Microsoft want? They want to see a return on their gaming division, especially after they just gave them $70 billion to acquire Activision Blizzard. I really don't think they care if players buy an Xbox and then buy Xbox games. Like when a bunch of people ran to buy Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, I don't think they cared that a bunch of people were buying the PlayStation version of the game because they were still getting money. They were probably like, thank God, I don't have to sell this person a box and then try to sell them Fallout 4. They could just buy the game. Now that's very telling. Nothing is off limits. There is no red line. So That potentially means that there could be a multi-platform version of Halo, Gears, classic iconic Xbox franchises. We've been hearing rumors that Hellblade 2, they're considering a PlayStation version of that, Indiana Jones, Starfield, and at one time, I will admit, the idea that Starfield could be coming to PlayStation 5 once filled me with anger. Not really anger. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been angry over any of this stuff, but it filled me with confusion. But now I'm like, who cares? Like, I already played it on Xbox. Why would I care if someone plays it on PlayStation? But while multi-platform generally is very cool as a customer, it's probably not going to be as easy or as good of a transition for everyone. Specifically, from my understanding, developing multiple versions of a game sucks if you're a developer. And right now, any Xbox studio has to make pretty much 4 versions of the game, 5 if you include the Xbox One consoles. They got to make one for Xbox Series X and S. They got to make one for PC. They got to make one for the One and the One X. So while yes, Xbox in theory will make more money by porting their games to other platforms, it will take more of an investment to make those ports in the first place and put a lot more on the plates of their developers who are already apparently stretched thin. And this is why I'm so interested to see what Xbox does with this new console, especially if it's rumored to have PC architecture, run the PC version of the games. They won't have to worry about developing a next-gen version, anyone who's a first-party studio. SkillUp recently did a write-up on his Patreon that was also very interesting. Of course, all this doom and gloom going around Xbox, he did a piece where he interviewed a bunch of developers and asked them, is it worth it to bring their game over to the Xbox platform at all? And according to his sources, apparently the difficulty of porting over the game to Xbox or making an Xbox version isn't what's turning people off of bringing their game over, especially when the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch are the targets for optimization. When you throw in the Xbox One and the One X, apparently it was not worth it at all for smaller devs, and he alleges that universally, developer sales on the Xbox platform are always the lowest. Weirdly enough, people said a lot of the same things about bringing their game over to PlayStation as well. According to this article, the real money is in Switch and Steam. So I guess it would be pretty cool if on the next Xbox you were able to download Steam games. But another thing to consider with Xbox in terms of their multiple platforms, I'll throw in another platform that we haven't really talked about, Game Pass. I saw people harassing this dude on Twitter because they were saying his game was going to be dead on arrival because it's not coming to Game Pass. And according to SkillUp's article, apparently it's not worth it for some developers to launch on Xbox if they're not also going to be putting their game on Game Pass. But to other people, they get really lucrative Game Pass deals so they don't have to worry about making that money back through traditional sales. What I don't like about some of this discourse is it's not like SkillUp. SkillUp is a really cool guy, but I see a lot of people saying, oh, Xbox players, they are conditioned, they're trained to only want to play games on Game Pass. They don't want to buy games, with some even inferring that developers are averse to shipping their game on Xbox because of those Game Pass subscribers and that we're losing out on opportunities. I don't like that. I don't like this inference that we should blame the customer. Like, if you saw Game Pass and you thought it was a really good deal and you signed up for it, you should not be blamed for like, oh, it's your fault that these studios closed down, or it's your fault that this game isn't on the Xbox platform. It's your fault. But if that's really the case, Xbox needs to make doubly sure that they're sweetening the deal for these people to bring their game over to Game Pass so their subscribers can have access to it. A multi-platform approach could benefit Game Pass as well. No longer would the pressure be on Game Pass to constantly be growing in subscriptions and revenue if people are buying the game somewhere else. Listen, I know none of this is pretty. I know there's still a lot of questions. Xbox is clearly in a transition following the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. They're trying to figure it out. And it seems like they've been trying to figure it out for a while. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that this whole multi-platform stuff will be bad. Ultimately, I think it will be a good thing. I think it's just awkward right now because we have this attachment to Xbox as a console in a time when the console is becoming less and less important to play those games. Anyways, guys, that's my daily rant about Xbox and the direction that they're going in for the day. If you like this video, if you like my content, if you like Xbox, consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.